Hey, what's up guys? In this video I'm going to be talking about the FG Stress by Slate Digital. And it is a module for the virtual mix rack, and it's an emulation of the Distressor. And I became aware of what a Distressor is quite a number of years ago. It was I was watching a video, the featured music, I believe, in the studio with Swedish House Mafia. They're producing the track called One. They just mentioned in passing that they ran the track through a distressor and they just pointed into the ether behind them. Apparently, there's a distressor in the corner that wasn't. They ran it through that, and I was like, what's a distressor? I've never heard of that. I've heard of like compressors and stuff like that, but what's a distressor? And I went online, which you did in the day, and it was explained to me that it's not quite a compressor, it's a distressor. So it's a compressor that adds distortion. And I was like, okay, that's neat. And I didn't quite get it until, I became more privy to recording and stuff like that. The distressor originally was designed to emulate and replace vintage gear, vintage compressors, right? So it is a hardware compressor that can sound like a lot of different kinds of compressors. It can even sound like tape. It can do all sorts of cool stuff. And it's one of those like Mount Olympus, it's coveted. There are studios with like 20 of these things in there just because they're so good. And you see them, they're iconic. They have those gigantic knobs. I've used one a couple of times. They just sound really good on everything. You want to track vocals, DeStressor. You want to emulate an LA2A, you can do that. And yeah, there's like cookbooks online on how to emulate sounds. But what makes it special is its flexibility to be gentle in terms of its compression and its harmonics, to being flat out like rude. And that makes it very appropriate for electronic music, because in electronic music we really need the flexibility and things like that. And yeah, you hear it on countless records. It's a lot of really cool stuff going on under the hood. And with that being said, we haven't really seen too many emulations of it. I imagine it's very difficult to emulate because it's just a bunch of different things going on. It's a bunch of different compressors all put together, and that's what you gotta kind of understand with this. Is there's no set knee, there's no set attack and release. The ballistics change depending on the ratio, and that brings me to what we're going to be doing. So I'm going to turn it off for a sec, and we're going to listen to our material here. I'm going to use it on electronic music, something smooth and buttery. And yeah, I'm just going to hit play. Right. And I'm going to turn on the distressor. So the distressor is something fascinating. We're going to set it right now. We're going to do a couple settings. I'm going to set the attack to 0, the release to 0. I'm going to set the ratio to 1, 1 to 1. And what 1 to 1 means is that there's no compression going on. And this is where I think it would be appropriate to start when I'm trying to explain the distressor. It's a very deep piece of equipment, but this is how I'm going to start doing it. So you have your ratios down here: 1 to 1, 2 to 1, 3 to 1, 4 to 1. These are how much the volume is reduced once it goes beyond the threshold. So a compressor is like someone who automatically turns down the volume when it gets too loud. If you're watching a movie on TV and the commercials hit and the commercials are just like, holy crap, like blow up your speakers. If you were turning them down, then you would be effectively what a compressor is. That's a rudimentary explanation. I'm assuming if you're watching this, you know what a compressor is, and I recommend that you figure out what a compressor does before you watch this. So the ratio dictates how much you turn it down once it goes beyond the threshold. and that's dictated by the input and the detector circuit. So a ratio of 1 to 1 means nothing will happen. 2 to 1, you'll get some gentle riding of the audio. Then there's 3 to 1, 4 to 1, which, might be the limit for mastering, depending on what's going on. And then you get the gosh darn aggressive ones, 6 to 1, 10 to 1, and you'll notice that the LEDs are getting more and more angry. These are, I think it emulates the all-in mode, or the 1176, I believe. That's what that's trying to emulate, right? And it does. You get more of an aggressive. This would be for like drums and all sorts of stuff. And each one of these, think of it as a separate compressor. The attack and release ballistics will change. Nuke is limiting. Wouldn't call it infinity to 1, but Nuke is like, you're in for it. Like it's the most aggressive you can get. So just keep that in mind. From left to right, you get more aggressive. And the green is you're good for, mastering and your sounds and stuff like that. And for these, you're doing rock and metal or something like that. So keep that in mind. So 1 to 1 is essentially no compression going on whatsoever. And you're like, what the heck's the point of that? Well, 1 to 1 allows us to listen to the color and I guess the distortion generator that's within the unit. It's very important to comprehend what's going on with that. So these kinds of pieces of gear, it's not so much you're setting the threshold like in a compressor that we're used to, like FabFilter Pro C or anything like that. You change what's being fed into. You change the volume of what's being fed into the circuit, right? So with that being said, it's feeding it in, and then that's how you set the thread. So it's kind of like a reverse sort of thing. You're not actually reducing a thing until it peaks. You're boosting the volume, and then you'll see the gain reduction LED array dictate kind of what's going on. So let's start with that. I'm going to bring this up, and you'll notice that there's LEDs here for the gain reduction, and then this is for the like what's being fed into the distortion generator, the transfer function, whatever you want to call it. This is where the color and the what makes a distressor, distressful. Right, so now that yellow light has come on, that means that we've gotten some, I guess, harmonic distortion. And it, we want to not approach red line, although it can be an effect. Right, and that'll tell us that we are clipping. So we don't want a red line. So the input is being fed into the detection circuit, and then we can bring the output down. And I'll just briefly kind of match these. All right, so we're getting some deliciousness because there's a distortion under the hood going on inherent to this unit. We can take it a step further though, because there are distortion 2 and distortion 3 down here. This gives us the ability to change which distortion that we want. So there's the inherent distortion within the unit, which is clean, right? It's very musical and it works quite well. You can select distortion 2, and this gives us more even harmonics. Right, and we're hearing gain there, but we're hearing this mid-range warmth, and that's what that is achieving. I want to also explain that I turned on oversampling. It's very important when you're dealing with distortion and transients that you want your oversampling to occur, and that just gives you, you don't want aliasing, so there you go. Off would be great for tracking, so yeah, you want oversampling to be on. So let's continue with distortion 3. Now this one's a little bit more aggressive, so I'm going to turn it down. And that gives us more of like a mid-rangey vibe in there. And these are important to understand. So I always thought that the high pass, so you can have the high pass on for both distortion 2 and 3, but you can't have distortion 3 and distortion 2 on at the same time. So keep that in mind. The high pass actually occurs post distortion. Right, so here's a little block diagram. So the audio comes in, fed into a differential amplifier. That's fed into a potentiometer, connected to ground, and that's fed into this is the gain reduction thingamajig, and that's fed into the distortion generator, and then it's sent through the high pass filter, 80 hertz high pass filter, and that works out, and there's a little switch here to dictate whether it goes through, and then that's fed into the output amp. It's a really basic diagram. I'm sure we're going to be coming back to it in a moment, but yeah, that's something to keep in mind. So it's not a high pass before distortion, it's after. And that's useful for vocal tracking. You don't want the low end or something like that, or whatever's going on. Typically, I have that off for this kind because I don't want to lose the low end. I work so hard for it. Anyway, so that's the distortion relationship with the input and output. Output does not add more distortion here, so keep that in mind. So yeah, you don't want to go into the red. Okay, I've explained that. We're good to go. I'm going to get into the actual act of compression. So there's different kinds of compression. There's transparent, not transparent. There's I guess that's basically it. I'm sure there's more. My brain's farting out. But there's compression that you don't really hear, and then there's compression that's very obvious. And we can hear kind of both within this unit. And how we dictate what kind of compression that we need, it's important to kind of understand and look at what we want to do. I'm using this on a pseudo master bus, so I'm going to use a compression that's very gentle. Right, that's not very gentle. I'm going to actually bring down the input. Right, and I'll bring up the output here. See what I'm doing? I'm bring it down, bring it up. Right, so I'm getting 2 dB of gain reduction here, and this is dictated by the attack and relay. I'll go 4 to 1. I'll increase the input. All right, so the trick is, stay within the green, depending on what you're going for. You might want to go a little bit more, but yeah, it's the input-output relationship. Right, so we're getting more punch there, a bit more clarity on the low end. And yeah, we're turning it on off, and we're getting some really cool results. And that's with an attack at 0 and a release at 0, which isn't actually at 0. They're just values between 1 and 10. And the way the attack and release behave depends on the ratio. But yeah, we'll let some more of the transients kind of come through. Oh, I want to turn it on. We can get more of a pumping action here, right? By increasing the release. We can try 2 to 1. 3 to 1, 4 to 1. Right, we're getting some the pumpiness to it, but it sounds transparent. I mean, it sounds musical. It sounds like appropriate. So those are the 2 to 1 and 4 to 1. I want to kind of explain the detection circuit, which is over here. All right, so we have the detection input, and we have a number of options here. So we have these thing called a band emphasis, and then a high pass filter. So what the heck are those? Well, they're over here. Let me just put that away. We have the high pass, which will prevent the low end from, making the compressor kind of modulate, right? And it gives us, it gives us less gain reduction because that low end isn't going through there. Right, so we can in turn increase the input, decrease the output. We get more of a natural sound that doesn't necessarily react too much to the bass. This is very useful. This is a sidechain input. It's very well understood. You should understand it as well. If you have like this low end that's kind of vibrating slowly, the compressor will be like, what the heck's going on here? Plus, bass is usually a lot louder perceivably than higher frequency content. Higher frequency content, the reverse of that. So just high pass filter on the side chain adds to kind of a cleaner gain reduction in your detection circuit. Yeah. Next up is the band emphasis. So this band emphasis, according to the diagram, comes before the high pass filter. What this does is this will give you a little boost in the frequency that humans hear very well in. So that'll be more of the focus on what the kind of compressor grabs onto. So it's again more of a natural way of making a compressor sound a little bit more natural, right? It's a useful thing. And then we have a link here. So link is a way to link 2 units together because they are mono units. You'd buy 2 and then you link them together. You have a stereo unit. Linking these together will link the gain reduction. And it'll link the gain reduction. So something happens on the left or the right, it'll reduce both the left and the right equally. Having that off could, depending on what you're doing, it could do something weird to the stereo image and make things sound all wibbly wobbly. But for the most part, you can give it a try. You can use it. You don't have to use it. You'll get more of a, if using this for like mastering in an aggressive way, you might want to turn link on. But without it, it will kind of distort the left and the right equally. It'll do some really cool stuff. So there's that. I've never really ran into an issue using this in the way that I do and not having link on or off. I've never ruined anything. So let's, we got some compression going on here. We can try distortion modes too. Right, just sounds really cool. Distortion 3. Getting more harmonics in there. It's getting pretty aggressive. We can try 2 to 1. 3. So general rule of thumb is when when you're using compression, maybe 1 to 5 dB max. If you just want to play it safe and you just want to kind of ride the audio and get that compression in terms of mixing. But for an effect, feel free to use the higher values, and we're going to do that now. So we'll go 2 to 1. So that's pretty punchy. I mean, we have the attack. We're adjusting the attack, letting that transient come through. Right, and the release will dictate, how fast the audio resets. Right, and we're getting into like special effect compression territory. And, it's hard to make this sound bad. I shouldn't say that. But it's more difficult than other compressors, just because each of these ratios is it switches things up and makes things sound pretty cool. All right, so we got that kick and then that low end. So now we're getting to some hefty compression. Right, and because that Rode Mellotron thingamajig is modulating, it's doing something to the compressor that I don't like, so it might not be appropriate. Right, so we're getting a lot of gain reduction there. Let's tone that down. Right, and for Nuke, I think that's a pretty good sweet spot there. Right, so we can increase the release to make it pump a bit more. You don't want the release to not fully recover before it hits again. Like, this is not good. You want to have it so that release has room to recover. Right, not recovering. And we can adjust the attack as well. Right, so we're grabbing that little click of that kick, and we can preserve it more. And we can, go to like maybe where the gain reduction doesn't even occur, or it barely does. It's so versatile. So versatile, and that's why it was made so popular, and it still is. What else? Yeah, there's a mix knob if you want to do some not mid-side. What am I talking about? If you can do some parallel distressing. Oh, I want to turn it on. So we can do some hardcore stuff here. With the high pass, maybe that. Or set it to 1-to-1. Maybe give it a little bit of clipping, just to give it that sort of punch, I guess, going on there. Right, and you get a nice warm effect with that. I'm just kind of scratching the surface with this. You can do all sorts of things. It doesn't have to be on a master, but you know, I would try it on, you know, usual suspects, drums, maybe your old drum bus, maybe a synth. You can just go, you can go to town with this thing. You can use it just as a distortion generator, and you can use it to emulate tape. Oh, I forgot. Yeah, 10-to-1 here. This is an opto mode, so you can, you know, do a bunch of things with an opto, which is a completely different compression type. So opto is more of a kind of rides the audio, and that works well on. We use it a lot on vocals and stuff like that. Yeah. So there's that. I hope you enjoyed that video. I hope you learned stuff. Take care and have a good one.